Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello. So as you have obviously gathered by not only the thumbnail alone, but also I was supposed to take my green screen down. What's the thought? I got too carried away with setting. Oh, my phone dinged. So for a second, the alien invaded. So as you can clearly see, I'm in a set of Barbie blonde. Yes, do have some beigeish tone left over, but it's more like a blob. You know, just because of the natural texture, the ring light hitting. So I wanted to take my green screen down, so therefore there's no digital alteration. When you activate your green screen, your hair changes just slightly, and you got this little glow directly around you. So I want you guys to see in a very authentic-ish lighting. Yes, I still have my sister's ring light on. So this is new extensions as well, Foxy Locks. I love Foxy Locks extensions. There's not a hair extensions brand out there that I have loved more. I've had my time with Hair House Warehouses, which is a hair care product supplier, but it's also a conjoined salon, which they obviously provide hair styling products just as far as home care maintenance goes with your hair, but also what's used in a salon. They also sell it to the public. So that's where I got my bleach and powder and my sister's pink dye. My sister's pink dye from, etc, etc. So they've also got extensions there, clip-in extensions, which I've had my time with them. They barely last the first couple of weeks, 4 weeks at the most, depending on how much you use them and what you're doing with them. I did have my time with VP Fashions. I did have my time with Rephrase with Luxy Hair. With Foxy Locks, at least some of them come multi-tonal or just with a slight undertone depending on what colour you're going for. So I definitely prefer that with Extensions brand, and when you go for express shipping, it arrives within a week's time, and it's a UK brand as well, so that's just as amazing. So these ones are Hollywood Blonde. My phone keeps singing. I will answer it later. Right next I just managed to charge my battery up well enough to get to 2 bars. These ones are Hollywood Blondes, about 20 inches, though I did trim off the ends about an inch or 2 off, because I didn't want them super long. They are clearly very, very beautiful. Ashy tone with just a hint, very minimal hint of beige tones, which obviously natural blondes do have a mix of both. My own hair, as you can clearly see, I am very platinum, still with the last remaining bits of, goldenness here and there, but mostly very white in other places because of the purple shampoo, which my mum was actually using when she purchased it. Apparently she was using purple shampoo to keep her grey silver hair toned, which is an interesting fact when it comes to silver hair. Also, clearly no makeup, but my whole point is with this video is I'm going to be talking you through with the step-by-step process I used when lifting my hair up to get this blonde in a matter of 78 hours, 78 straight-ish hours. I did use 30-volt blue powder because it helps counteract the yellow tones. Generally, also depends on how long you leave it for, plus what state the hair is in color wise when you color it. So clearly I was this darkish brunette from before, and I had this random streak of missing my former blonde, multi-tonal natural looking blonde that I had for at least 5 years. I mean, when I was first going into blonde, I wanted to go silver because I was inspired by Haley Reese, and I went silver twice successfully, with damaged ends along the way, but it's a given when bleaching your hair. Gone blonde for about 5 years, and then it started to occur to me that my roots are just a bit too stark blondes, so I needed to fix up a way to make them more natural. Hence, I'll insert an image. Hence this beigey ashy tone that I was using for a very long time. And then my hair really got screwed over from the chlorine, but I screwed my own hair over, but I didn't take having to actually rinse your hair out of chlorine quickly to salvage your hair, because blondes, natural oil peroxide, and chlorine and salty water does not mix well because it's so dry. It's more drying than what bleach alone is. So as I was saying, I had this random streak of wanting to revisit that spark of joy of being blonde. When the second time the silver faded, I was actually realizing just how proud I was at finally being a sustainable blonde, because every time I went ombre, my hair I could never get any further than the awkward lemony borderline orange tones, especially towards the line where your colour ends and the blonde starts, plus the brassy look, clearly freshly bleached. I could never really get this blonde so quickly. By the time I actually really gave it a shot, proper salon quality bleach, and then eventually I just decided to reduce down to Nordic Blonde, which is a pharmacy or grocery store purchase blonde. Inspired relatively by Taylor Momsen's latest platinum hair and a little bit of Haley Reese. So I wanted to revisit that blonde. I was just in the back of my mind, I inspired to go blonde again, and I shot right up to this platinum blonde within 78 hours of bleaching my hair using a foiling method, so therefore it traps the heat in, plus makes your bleaching or pre-lightening method look much neater. So I got the extensions first, and once those arrived, because I already had the bleach left over when I was adjusting my sister's hair to that Taehyun, Yeonjun, I really do not remember the name. I will list it across the screen. This baby cotton candy pink that he has in his hair, faded and freshly coloured. Sean was inspired to go that, so we lifted her up the rest of the way back to a blonde and then went in with the desired colour. So because we had the bleach left over, I then used all that to colour my hair, meeting up with the extensions. Now when I first did this, as you'll see in a reference video, you'll see that I lifted up the ends of my hair first, because that's where obviously the former colour was still sitting, this dark brown. I left my roots alone. I couldn't really tell where my roots were and where the old colour was, because the colours were so closely clashing together, which in a way is a good thing, because then you don't see the roots growing through and it's not obvious that you're not wearing your own colour. But it was hard to tell. I didn't want to be stuck with hot root, meaning your roots are way brighter than what the ends of your hair is. You would definitely want it to be vice versa as best as you can, because you want that natural shadowed root to give you a head start with your darker root, just slightly darker root, and a much lighter ends. So started off with lifting up the ends first, and then waited about 45 minutes, maybe up to 50 minutes or so, and I lifted up really quickly. I had rinsed out, purple shampooed, used what was left of the Olaplex, and then conditioned generally, let my hair completely air dry. I did not touch up the blow dryer once. So once my hair was completely dry, or dry enough to be able to accept some more bleach, so by the following hour or two, I then went back through with a splicing method, but I wanted to leave the nape of my hair alone, because that was the part of my hair that was the shortest from a haircut I had updated to, and it was already pretty much adapting to my natural root colour. So the bottom didn't really need to be overly touched. It was just from occipital bone. I kept thinking it was occipital bone, which is that bit of a lump at the back of your head that everybody has. So from there up, I was first splicing, but then I thought I'll do myself some better favours and just do the same method I did in the beginning. So having done so, having lifted, covered all the way back up, just to essentially bring up whatever was hadn't taken to the bleach so well, and just to catch it up a little bit with other strands that had taken really well. So after that was rinsed out, the same in shower routine, purple shampoo, Olaplex, conditioner, let air dry, and then I finally got around to about, I think latest that night, close to 1 in the morning, I then got on with my roots. Now, I already did hook her at the back off camera, so I needed to really concentrate not to worry about, how well I'm angling myself for the camera. Even though I had the viewfinder up, my elbow was still going to get in the way because I had the camera facing directly into the mirror. So then I just, made life easier for myself and focused on the size of my head on camera. So that way you guys could see. I was using this rotational circular method that my former hairstylist trainer taught me, and it just helps it gives off it's one technique away from being a splicing technique. Splicing just means you take very thin layers of a wholesome section in between sections. Weaving, you tend to go up and down. That means you select certain individual strands, it's like a 50-50 of your head, depending on how much of your head you're covering, obviously. So this circular method is precisely the same thing as an up and down method. It just catches a lot more hair, so it's one technique away from splicing, but it's like a in between. I don't technically know what it's called. You've got the weaving, which is up and down. It's rotational weaving in between, and then full on splicing. Or you take the whole entire chunk of hair that you've sectioned off and you put that in the foil or whatever. Or voice is running dry. So I did all out foils from my whole head round 1, just to lift up the ends. Then round 2 I did that same splicing, but then converted back to the same former first technique for the rest of my hair. And then when I got to the roots, I did the back first, and then just still added whatever was half spliced into the foil as the rest of my hair, just to give the extra oomph of highlights, so it creates like an illusional blur of colour between previous beigey tones from the lightener and newer highlighted, so it just helps give it more light and life. And of course I worked on the sides of my head upwards, which it does work out that way, just I went wrong somewhere, because by the time I rinsed I did not get it on video or take a photo, but I had these blocks of my own root colour still there. Like I had more of stripes at the side of my head, but the very top of my head worked out beautifully. I looked like I had a freaking mohawk at the top, a perfectly blonde rooted colour. The back was a natural disaster. Some spots I had unfortunately missed, so as I was going through and just touching up the sides, wherever I missed, I then scanned the rest of my head and I realised, oh god. So I haven't touched up the rest of my roots at the back. Or just melodrama plus. Yesterday, about late afternoon, 4 in the evening, I then just targeted the very top of my head that was still a little bit hanging on to some beige tones, a very pinky tone, however, like a beigey pink or a dusty pink. So once I finally concluded that, here we finally are. There are some things about my hair coloring process, bleaching, which I didn't get on camera, and others I just obviously did because it's like a step by step. The length first, going in with the length again, and then with the roots, and then just a few little spot checks around the scalp, not the scalp, but around the surface of the head. So like I said, I got the extensions first, and once those arrived, I then knew to meet my hair up to the same level, rather than vice versa. With the brown extensions that I had, they arrived first for sure, but I already had the brown bauxite, and I did not realise that the brown dye that I was going to use was more cool tone versus the extensions, which were more warm tones, red undertones versus the yellowish green undertones that my previous brown hair had. So with all that, barely 3 days or 78 hours of being brunette on top of the two to almost 3 days of being blonde, going blonde. Oh my god, get you setting straight, Shannon. So barely 3 days going into blonde, and barely 3 days later of now being blonde. I haven't copped that much overwhelming damage. I trimmed up the ends about twice, like the tiniest little dusting trim to begin with, but then I decided to take off about close to an inch, maybe just borderline 2 inches. I did trim my fringe in a little bit more, because prior it was about cheekbone height, but then it was coming in, and then the rest of my hair came down, and that just looks so odd. It looked like very awkwardly grown out bangs. Plus I did have that grown out pixie cut look inspired by Cara Delevingne when she had her more grown out pixie cut. Of course she was down to the scalp short, I believe for a fundraiser or a movie, or a bit of both. So I did that with my hair, trimmed my hair in just so that it shifted and will grow a little bit more evenly rather than block like. So having also lifted up my hair like so, and just sipped at the very end just to fix up the unintentional layering split end. But this is without additional lighting, just how my hair is looking, plus extensions obviously. It's just most of the surface you need to pay more attention to. So with all that developing and processing, I just have not felt that joyous spark of being blonde, and my butter is now running flat, so it's time to go back to brunette 3 days later after being blonde again. Oh, still got my bloody face mask on. Oh, please. Okay. That's my Haley Reese Casper the Friendly Ghost one. So this is how my hair is looking without extensions, by the way. It really isn't a bad blonde. It is very, very, I feel like an albino almost. So as you can now clearly obviously see, I'm back to being brunette. So when going in with blonde, you want to make absolute sure that it is something you definitely want to do. That the maintenance of the hydration and moisturizing products you can handle, or you in and out with that. When the roots regrow in, depending how dark you are naturally, when you're absolutely prepared to line up the roots, whether it's by on direct scalp sort of lightening method or through foils. Make sure you don't miss spots. I mean, with foils, I was obviously missing spots, or missed spots I should say, but when I was doing my on-scalp lightening services on my own head many years ago, I got so used to feeling the back of my head and just feeling around, got really accustomed to what was back there without the purpose of a second mirror. So I figured, if I had that down pat for about 5 years straight or less, then surely I could handle this as is. With foils, feel my way around, tilt the foil where I could so I could see, what parts of the parts I could see through the mirror with a tilted foil. It was also what I was trying to do on camera as well. I was also trying to use the viewfinder of my camera as like a second mirror. So if you have absolutely an amount of preparation to help yourself with the blonde and maintain it for as long as you want, make sure it's absolutely something you want to do. Because like I said, I was searching for that spark of joy that I felt when the second time the silver wore out, or faded out more specifically, and when I got to the blonde, I realised just how proud I was that I was officially blonde. No brass, I mean, apart from that little bit of undertone of brass that natural blondes have, that golden look, golden undertone. Apart from that, I was just so happy of being a blonde. Like, finally. I mean, I never really looked at being a blonde when I was on braid, but generally very happy that I managed to get my hair this way at all. So I just left it that way, and then once again, like the third time around, I was already inspired by Hailey Reese to go silver again. But once it completely faded out, I thought, no, I'm definitely much happier with this blonde that I have. 5 years go by, and I'm between a very Maria Brink blonde, and then becoming sickly obsessed with the 100. I wasn't obsessed with Elisa Taylor. Well, now Elisa Taylor Morley, but back then just Elisa Taylor, and more specifically Clark Griffin. I was obsessed with her type of blonde, obviously so natural, but very, very natural looking. I thought there's just something about my blonde hair, despite being proud of it, it's just missing the natural undertones. All blondes have a bit of a shadow root, because the very top of their hair is very silvery, sometimes very beigey looking. The rest of the hair has some multi-tones, but is all one stationary colour. I, on the other hand, was very stark blonde. I mean, yes, most blondes as little kids have that, because for some reason, just little kids versus adults, the hair hasn't really adapted to, different lighting or undertone changes. So that's why I started to get the box dye method from Garnier Nutri, so that ashy beige undertones, targeting the roots mostly. And once I built up my confidence with using that, and then branched out to the rest of my mid-length and ends, and underneath my head, the blonde looked so much better, looked far more natural. I had darker root in darker lightings, brighter root in brighter lightings, and I thought that was what the missing piece of being blonde was. So I held that going for the next 5 or so years, and then by the time we moved here, of course, we were at a pool. I was dipping in and out of the pool, and it just did not occur to me to rinse my hair. Well, it occurred to me to rinse my hair with apple cider vinegar, just to drain out the chlorine and salt and whatever other chemicals is in the pool. But I knew that at the back of my head that it is important to do so. But what I didn't know is that for blondes, because my hair was at such a good place of being really healthy feeling, really healthy looking, I just didn't take it the immediate steps serious enough. So by the time I even got around to it, now my hair was fine the next day, but then the next few times I went for a swim, my hair just went under. It was so damn frizzy. Breakages here and there. Even at the back of my head, when I had my hair in braids, I was just playing around and oddly pulling the back of my head for no apparent reason, and then my fingers came across a broken piece. I thought, oh, did I miss a strand? No, I felt just how short it was, and then it hit me. Breakage, not from being blonde necessarily, but just from the chlorine damage and not rinsing that out serious enough and being proactive with it enough. Even with apple cider vinegar treatments, the damage had been done, literally. So that's when I then contemplated going brunette. Now, brunette obviously wasn't going to factor for my hair health alone, because obviously brown hair dye chemicals were still going to affect my hair, but it meant that I would no longer be touching up my roots, toning with the dye, eat, sleep, repeat for a couple of more months, which I was still doing even after the chlorine damage, and that was still part of my blonde routine, my going blonde routine. And that was also really did damage to my hair. My hair was just feeling like shit. So going brunette, it just meant I would leave my hair alone altogether, just wash it, let it dry naturally, oil treatment, as in like coconut oil towards the end for hydration, and style as I choose. So I have a little style right now, a bit of a twist in the bangs, braids, buns, ponytails, what have you, just styles like those. And then I had the random spark I wanted to go blonde again, as we clearly figured from this video. Relatively inspired by Taylor Momsen and Hailey Reese, but getting there, just the spark, the joy of being blonde, it was no longer there. So, also, another reason why no spark is there is because I'll just be putting it on text on the screen, subtitle, because I've actually promised, well, not this is Instagram, but I did promise that I wouldn't splurge just all over the internet. So, no clue how long he has left to go. So, I mean, that has nothing a lot to do alone with going blonde and not seeing the spark there anymore, but I need to get that off my chest. With all that aside, so that's my updates. If I'm seeming a bit down in the dumps and tired, despite my lazy ass sleeping all day, go blonde if you can absolutely handle the maintenance of it. I mean, yes, I could handle the maintenance of it, but the spark was just no longer there, so I hands back to brown. You probably can't really tell under ring light, but sadly the brand that I used didn't really take to a lot of my hair. There are still quite a lot of lighter strands. It looks like I have highlights, very faded, dim highlights. So by the time I finally manage to get my ass to a store, I will actually buy some more hair dye. Oh, such a squirrel brain today. Or this evening actually, at 7-Eleven. So this was my browns of blonde to brunette video. The colouring wasn't a fail, even though I missed quite a few spots in the back of my head and the side of my head. It wasn't a fail. I absolutely got up to a very desirable blonde. It's just the spark for it was no longer there, and I just wasn't feeling it anymore, and I was feeling a bit down within myself. Not that I failed myself, it's just wasn't as satisfied when I first got there, because I had a purpose of going blonde, which was to go silver, and I did go silver 3 times in a row. And I was just as happy when I was sitting on the blonde, because of how proud I was of getting there. And wanted to revisit that again, especially because 2020 was such a bitch to us all in so many different ways. 2021 has been a relative step up, despite the news I also just shared with you. I will eventually get my hands on a darker hair dye just to cover up the parts that didn't necessarily miss, you just didn't necessarily take. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do hope you enjoyed this, and I shall see you all for my future videos. Bye guys.